Are you interested in understanding GLP-1 medications like Ozempic, Wegovy, or Mounjaro? Then join us on The Plus Sides, Cracking the Obesity Code, the groundbreaking podcast helping people change their lives one episode at a time. The Plus Sides podcast is a disruptor. We're breaking down barriers, smashing stereotypes, and sharing inspiring stories that'll leave you feeling informed and empowered. Join us every week to learn from doctors who are specialists around GLP-1 medications like Ozempic, Wegovy, or Mounjaro. They'll provide you with science and facts to validate these incredible stories. But that's not all. We'll also bring you the voices of the GLP-1 Mounjaro TikTok community, real people who face the challenges of obesity-related diseases and disorders and discovered the incredible plus sides of GLP-1 medications. Our episodes are filled with heartwarming stories, laughter, and moments of triumph. You'll connect with our amazing community members who are reclaiming their health and experiencing their fullest lives. Are you ready to embark on a journey of discovery and empowerment? Tune in to The Plus Sides, Cracking the Obesity Code, and together we'll change the narrative around obesity and end the stigma. Subscribe now on YouTube or your favorite podcast platform and join our incredible community. Let's celebrate the plus sides of life together, because every story deserves to be heard. Every life deserves to shine, and everyone deserves access to expert knowledge and medication. The Plus Sides Podcast. You're not alone. It's not your fault.
Alive on the moon, Jaro, it's on the Penalive, with your host David Knapp.
Thank you, Claptrack, and happy Thursday night. I am Dave Knapp, man on the Mounjaro. That's why I'm here. You are on the pan. Wegovy, Saxenda, Victoza, Trulicity, Mounjaro, Zepbound, that pen. That's why you're here, and we're all here to learn a little bit more about the medications that we're on, the issues that we're faced, and to enjoy community. This community is, for my money, the best community out there when it comes to GLP-1. If you are new here, drop an N in the chat. Let me know that you're new here. I love to welcome new people by name. If you're OG, thank you for being here, especially if you're a member of the channel. Members of the channel are who make this thing happen. You are the ones that allow me to do this work and to justify the time, the effort, the energy that it takes to put into this. And I just really appreciate you for it. If you'd like to become a member, also $2.99, links in the description of this video. $2.99 is all it costs, and you get access to custom emojis. Let me see those custom emojis in the chat. You get access to some extra videos, and you get my podcast recording a couple days before that drops to the rest of the world. Plus, we do a members-only live stream before this show. So if any of that sounds entertaining to you and you want to give back to the work that I do, just $2.99 helps to do that. Thank you for those who are members of the channel already. I really appreciate it. Cloakster says, I am Ozempic Dave. That is right. Per Dr. Allo, I am Ozempic Dave. Ozempic Dave is now on Mounjaro. How about that? So yeah, I am back on Mounjaro, and I am down a whopping 7 pounds since I started Mounjaro about 7 weeks ago or so, 6-7 weeks ago. So yeah, the weight loss train is rolling again with Mounjaro. I am so happy about that. Yeah, I'm definitely team Mounjaro. But Ozempic did help me maintain at 2 milligrams. If you didn't get a chance to check this out, getting a FaceTime from my son here right in the middle of the show. So yeah, if you didn't get a chance to check out the website, onthepen.com, you want to check that out. It is a newly revamped website of mine. If you go to onthepen.com/email, you'll get the chance to check out my email list. And I would love for you to stay in touch with me that way, because we don't know how long this train ride is going to last. And I would love to keep in touch with you that way. So onthepen.com/email will get you to the sign up list, or you can just go to onthepen.com, scroll all the way down. But I did a couple articles this week, and one article was shared within my Zepbound for Weight Loss group. I don't know if y'all know, but I have a pretty sizable group on Facebook. It is about, gosh, we're almost to 14,000 people over in the Facebook group. Zepbound for Weight Loss, if you want to join over there. But somebody shared a really interesting article, and it was a graph from a diabetes association in Michigan, where they showed what the similar doses were between different GLP-1 medications. So if, for example, you were on 2 milligrams of semaglutide, it showed you what the equivalent dose roughly would be for tirzepatide, Mounjaro. And I thought that was interesting. If you are somebody who has struggled with having to go off and on different medications just because you can't find them, because all of these medicines have been such a wreck to find, then that will be a really cool article for you to check out. And there have been several this week. So you want to check that out at onthepen.com. If you sign up for the newsletter, we'll start rolling those articles out to you. They'll go straight to your inbox. So you're going to check that out at onthepen.com/emails. So check it out. We've got a great show for you tonight. I am so excited. We got Michelle Hess back to talk about maintenance, right? So that topic that's so far off my radar, it's not even funny, but we're going to keep you in the loop on some of the best practices for maintenance when you're deciding, what to do for maintenance, the dose that you should stay on, what weight you want to aim for maintenance. Michelle's here again to share all about that. We've got Mimi from Australia. I think it's sort of the middle of the day over there right now, but she said she was maybe going to pop on, but we've got a great interview from her. She's in the Retatrutide Triumph trial. So Mimi came on the pin to share a little bit about her experience with the Retatrutide trial. And if you know me, you know I'm all about that Retatrutide. And so I am so excited to bring that interview for you tonight. We have got so much to get to. Such a big week in the world of On the Pen, and I'm so excited to share with you some of what happened this week in this week's
Housekeeping.
You want mintful pillow? Housekeeping, this week's housekeeping. So first of all, something that we tried last month, and we're going to do this again, is 10% of all the super chats and 10% of all the paid memberships for the month of April will go to one random paid member on TikTok or YouTube for the month of May. So basically everything. Hey, Mimi is here. Welcome, Mimi. Thank you for being here. She's on her lunch break. So hopefully, oops, that's Carla's comment. Thank you for the emojis, Carla. If you have questions for Mimi, make sure you drop them in the chat, because I'm sure I did not ask all the questions that maybe you will have of her. We had a limited amount of time, but back to the gifts. 10% of all the gifts are going to go to one paid member. We'll draw that first week of May for what we kind of recorded in April. So thank you for those who contributed last month. We were able to send $100 to Anna. And so that went off in the middle this week with some stickers and a thank you note. So Anna, congratulations for winning last month. And thank you to everyone who contributed. Anna, I hope that helps out this month with your copay or whatever it may be. I hope that it blesses you. So that was awesome. Biggest super chat of the night gets to choose where I inject my 10 milligram Mounjaro. I got a 12.5 box on the way. It should be here tomorrow. And I'm excited to be back on the 12.5. Probably will go up to 15 next month, but we'll see. If I'm still losing weight at the 12.5, that'll be great. I've been taking the 10 a little bit closer together to kind of compensate for the fact that I was on the 12.5. This is what I could find that month. You know that we're all working with our doctors to try to figure out how to maximize what we can get. Some people are going all the way from 15 back to 5 and, from 5 to 10. And we're all over the place. These are the things that they did not test in the clinical trials, and these shortages are forcing people to get creative with their doctors to try to figure out how do we navigate all of these shortages. That's why the hashtag Release the Vials campaign is so important. And we'll get into that a little bit more in tonight's second segment of the show as we talk about what's for So what's fresh? Huge week in On the Pen this week. Huge week. So first of all, thank you so much for everyone who has been using the hashtag Release the Vials. This is a campaign that I started about 3 or 4 weeks ago, back when it was just the Mounjaro vials that were approved. And I said, listen, there's a solution to help ease these shortages. Maybe not completely resolve the shortages, but there's a solution to alleviate them for sure. And that solution is to bring the single-dose vials to the United States. Now, if you've ever taken apart one of these Mounjaro pens, you know they're quite complicated. And in fact, in the words of CEO Dave Ricks, the CEO of Eli Lilly, these are some of the most complex little mechanisms to manufacture in the United States. And the fact is that it's not a money thing. It's not necessarily a resources thing. It's a human capital thing. They cannot find the right people. There's not enough of the right people to assemble the factories and the machines that make these complicated pens. So we know that single-dose vials are quite easy to manufacture. There's not a whole lot to them, just a little sterile vial that they fill with medication. And they can fill probably hundreds of these to every pen that they manufacture if you were to just go take the total manufacturing time and put it all together. These vials are much easier to produce, which are obviously drawn up with an insulin syringe. You just draw your medicine up. So single-dose vials were approved for Mounjaro. I started the hashtag Release the Vials campaign to hopefully, I want to say, put a little bit of pressure on Eli Lilly to know, hey, like, we're out here and we're struggling, and we know there's a solution. Within a few days of starting that campaign, I noticed on the FDA website that there was a little bit of a change to Zepbound. And I thought, this is interesting, because the change was to the packaging and the label insert. So all the big fold outs that come in your boxes of Mounjaro, right? Or Zepbound. And Zepbound had a change. They did not post any more information than that on that Friday. And I just said, the last time I saw them do this, they released approval for single-dose vials of Mounjaro. Might they be going to do that with Zepbound? And sure enough, the next Monday came. I watched the website like a hawk, and boom, there was single-dose vials approved for Zepbound. Now, that really blew up the hashtag Release the Vials campaign, because as I dropped that news about the single-dose vials being dropped, the approval being dropped on the FDA website, it just sort of took off and took on a life of its own. We did the interview with Bloomberg, and then Madison Muller, the reporter that I worked with, was kind enough to come on this show last Thursday. If you haven't checked it out, you got to go back and check out Madison. She is an awesome, awesome asset to the GLP-1 community within the mainstream media. And it's been great to get to know her, great to get to meet somebody who's like equivalent nerd level on knowing all this stuff. Now, she has to do it for her job, and I do it because I'm a genuine nerd. But it was so cool of her to come on the show last week. If you missed it, you missed out. But you don't have to miss out, because you can watch everything in posterity here on YouTube. So make sure you go back and check out that episode from last week with Madison Muller. So that sort of leads us to this past week, where I got a message from Yahoo Finance. And Yahoo Finance reached out and they said, hey, we would love to have you come on Yahoo Finance and talk a little bit about this Release the Vials campaign. So if you missed it, the link is in the description of this video. Make sure you go check out that Release the Vials video that I did live with Yahoo Finance. And make sure you like that video, share it, save it, do all the things. Leave a comment on it, because we would love for that video to do really well, because I'd like to go back. I got more to say, even though I used up all of my time and then some. Hey, it looks like we got a $19.99 super chat. Thank you very much for that, Michelle. That was very generous of you. I appreciate that. So yeah, it was a huge, huge week in the world of On the Pen. We did an interview with Yahoo Finance. So I had a huge week. There was other things that happened that I just can't tell you about on the front-facing side of this channel, but let me tell you, it was an even bigger week than it looks like on the surface. I'm telling you, we're going to pay attention to the earnings call, and we're going to listen closely, because I have a feeling that Eli Lilly is going to tell us something good. So we're going to listen very intently this week to that, or on the 30th, actually. So it happens on the 30th. So it's a couple weeks away yet, but we will check in. And of course, you know that I will follow that very closely. That's one of the most popular videos I do every quarter are the conference call, earnings call recaps that I do. And I've been doing those for over about a year and a half now. So we will talk about that, and hopefully we will have some really, really good news to tell you on the single dose vials. Hopefully we can get some resolution to this release the vials campaign. So that is the hope. So like I said, an absolutely huge week in the world of On the Pen. Just absolutely huge. We heard this week that Zepbound and Mounjaro are being restocked slowly at pharmacies. So if you've been able to find your Mounjaro or you've been able to find your Zepbound this week, put Mounjaro or Zepbound, depending on what you found. And then the dose that you found, put it in the chat. Because we announced early this week, based upon the feedback that I was getting in the Facebook group, it looked like many, many people were able to fill their prescriptions this week of both medications. There are still plenty of people that are waiting, right? But it looked like that restocking was sort of happening very slowly. So super good news for those of you who have been waiting for your script. A lot of you got some really exciting emails this week. If you have not been able to find your medication, we talk about like all the little tips and tricks that you can do to try to locate your medication. I want to tell you about one specific tip that I got from a viewer on TikTok this week. And I thought this was just ingenious. So we've always talked about calling your PBM, right? Your PBM is your pharmacy benefits manager. They're the ones that pay for your prescriptions. They decide what goes on your formularies. They are the ones covering the copay or covering the insurance side of it. And then you pay the copay, right? So they process all that. Basically what this person did is they said, okay, so I called my PBM and I told them, I can't find my medicine, my Zepbound. Would you consider covering Wegovy? And they said, no, we won't. And then that person said, okay, if you won't cover Wegovy, can you tell me where in my area, what pharmacies you are paying benefits to for Zepbound? And they obliged. They said, so we have seen successful fills at pharmacy A, B, C, and D, right? And I'm not just talking about, like, let's say, for example, this was CVS Caremark. They weren't just telling them where they were being filled at CVS. They were telling them where they were filled at Ma and Pa's pharmacy, right? So wherever they were paying benefits to for that medication, they shared that information freely with that person. And so not all PBMs are going to freely share this information, but this person's happened to. And so I put a video out about that, and I heard specifically people with CVS Caremark saw some pretty good response from that. So if you cannot find your medicine, here's a little hack. Especially if you have CVS Caremark. If you have Optum, forget about it. Optum is terrible. They're the worst of the worst. Change healthcare, right? So if you have CVS Caremark, I'd especially encourage you to do this. Call CVS Caremark. I know firsthand that they'll do a 20-mile radius search of their own pharmacies. They have an ability to do that very quickly. But ask them where they're paying out benefits in your area for Zepbound, and they should be able to tell you those pharmacies, find those pharmacies. Just a quick way to find the pharmacies that are using the wholesalers that have the medication, right? So that's my tip for you this week as it relates to finding your medicine if you have not been able to find them. But many of you have been able to find them. Some of you still haven't. That's unfortunate. I hope that you are able to find them, and I hope that tip helps. So that's what's going on this week. We're plowing right through the show. I'm trying to move as fast as we can. There's just so much to cover this week. We are going to take out the trash real quick. Somebody on TikTok, I think it was TikTok, said this week, you should call it Smash the Trash. I didn't get a chance to change the graphic, but we're going to change it to Smash the Trash. We're going to smash the trash this week. So one of the big rebuttals that you're going to get from somebody who doesn't know anything about these medications is that, oh, you can't take that medication. You're going to get thyroid cancer. There's a black box warning. Well, there was actually a study done, and this study was done in Denmark. It was 145,000 patients who were prescribed GLP-1 medications generically, like not one specific, but semaglutide or liraglutide. So 145,000. And the bottom line is they noticed no significant increase in thyroid cancer. And that's really positive news. I mean, we've talked about this going back to way back to when we started this channel, how rats, where these phase 1 trials happen with GLP-1 medications, rats have this, really, they're given really, really high doses of these medications in phase 1 trials, especially compared to what a human would ever be able to take. These rats in some of these medications develop medullary thyroid cancer, which is a very specific kind of thyroid cancer. And the important thing to know is rats within the cells of their thyroid have GLP-1 receptors that humans don't even have. So obviously, when you're doing phase 1 trials, you're doing phase 1 trials on rats, and it's not always an apples to apples outcome for rats and for humans. But this is a huge study, 145,000 people, and it noted no significant increase in medullary thyroid cancer in humans. So this is a huge trial. I think this is really good news for the class of medications. I hope that someday they can even remove this black box warning so we can just end this debate altogether. But no significant increased risk for those taking GLP-1s to develop medullary thyroid cancer. Whew. That was a long 20 minutes of getting through a lot of information. So thank you for those who have stuck with me. I hope that you're enjoying the show. If you're enjoying the show, smash that little love button, hit that like button, do all the things. Let the whole algorithm know that this is worth watching. Thank you all for being here. Really appreciate you. I'm excited to bring you this next segment of the show. This next segment of the show is one we introduced last week, right? As often as we can get to this, as often as we have time to get to this in the show, and as often as Michelle is available, she's going to bring us a little segment on maintenance. And so I know many of you have been clamoring for, like, how do I choose my maintenance dose? How do I choose my maintenance weight? What do I eat? What do I do? So I am so excited to bring my friend Michelle in, who's been here since the beginning of the show. She has hung around with me this whole time. She must be a glutton for punishment. I'm going to bring her into the stream. Michelle, welcome back.
Hi, thanks. It's great to be back.
Good
How
to
are you,
have
Dave?
here tonight.
Thank you. I'm so happy to be here. And I just hope I can offer something that'll help somebody out.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm so glad that you were willing to do this. I'm like, people keep asking me about maintenance, Michelle. I don't know what to do. So I'm still trying to figure out just how to get to maintenance. But for those who are at maintenance, what do you got for us tonight?
Well, tonight it's actually going to be 2 parts. Part 1 tonight and part 2 the next time we get a chance when I can be on, which maybe it'll be next week. We'll see, hopefully. So tonight we're going to talk about understanding and utilizing maintenance calories. This is a method that I've used, and I'm not the only one though. I've learned this from a bunch of different people over time and through biofeedback, which is actually the practice of using the data that you collect to see if you maintain your weight, right? And so a lot of people may already know these things, and nobody has to do any of these things, but this is just how I and some others have built habits to get to the point where we don't have to work so hard at this. Somebody like me who's chronically ill, I need the easy way when I can get it. But at first, there is a little work up front. So first of all, as we've talked about before, everybody has to find what's sustainable for them. Only a small percentage of people can do extreme lifestyles like keto, low carb, OMAD, intermittent fasting, meal replacements, bright line, those things. And that's because that small percentage of people don't find that to be extreme, but most of us do. So in the end, all of those actually amount to a calorie deficit, no matter what you do. And you could say, well, Michelle, when I was, before I was on Mounjaro or Ozempic or whatever, GLP-1, a calorie deficit didn't work for me. Well, that was then. this is now. You're getting your obesity treated now. So a calorie deficit should work for you. If it's not, then maybe the medication isn't working for you. And the goal here is to do some things to get to the point where you can eat more intuitively, but also keep in check so you stay in maintenance, or so you can reel it in when you need to. So, and I learned this with a lot of research and also watching some people. And I do want to give a shout out to some people. These people are creators, and they don't specifically necessarily believe obesity is a disease like we do, or in medications, but there's still some resources that you can check out. They've got YouTube channels and they're on Instagram. I'd say Heather Robertson is called Half Size Me, Jordan Syat's a personal trainer, Dr. Yanni Friedoff, and some other folks like those who I've just gained a lot of information from. And then I've come up with some things on my own. Sorry, I do have to have notes because this is a lot of information. Anyway, so I've learned to take what's important from them and keep it, and what I don't like from them and just kind of throw it out. But to learn to use maintenance calories, the easiest way is to track for a period of time. Doesn't mean you have to track forever, but and you can get away without tracking, but it's just a lot harder. So if you can track for a period of time after you've established what your maintenance calories should be, then you'll see if that is correct or not, and if you're eating the way you should. And you can learn to eat that way. You'll learn what the calories are in your preferred foods. You'll learn whether you would prefer to do an average weekly calorie allotment, or if you'd like to eat more on the weekends, less during the week. I mean, there's a lot of ways you can approach it, but biofeedback is the way to go, and that is using the tracking, as long as it doesn't trigger you. I know there are some people who get triggered by it, and so there's some other approaches I'll talk about another time for them. But tracking helps you develop mindfulness. It teaches you the calories in the foods that you enjoy, and it can also help you when you get off track. You can just maybe track for a week and see where you're going. So, and where we start is not perfect. Tracking the data and using that, you have to have a starting place. So next week, I want to talk about how to find where you should start, and using calculators, and how to start tracking and get to a point where you feel comfortable tracking for 2 to 4 weeks maybe. And you can even do this when you're still losing weight and do only 2 days a week in maintenance. I mean, there's a couple of ways to approach it, but I'll talk some more about that next week.
Awesome. Such great information. I'm excited to hear more about the tracking. Of course, for the last couple of months here, I've been working with a company called Flex. If you want to check them out, you can check them out across the bottom there. You can see it. But I've been working with Flex, especially with Lisa, who's been on the show a couple times over here on the pen. They have such a cool app. I don't know if I've told you about this, but their app, within their app, you literally just take a picture of your meal and it tracks it for you. And it's remarkably accurate. And so for somebody like me, who's like, I don't want to sit there and I don't have time to do all that, it's so easy. Perhaps there are others and you'll get into that.
Well, I will, but I love the picture apps. And one that I actually have used just to get back on track or to be more mindful is a picture app, but it's not as good as that one. I can tell you right now, it's okay, but it's not as good as that one.
This was remarkable. I was like, you're kidding me. You're kidding me. This is how easy it is. So yeah, if you're interested in that, you can check it out, flexnow.care/on-the-pen. But super good information tonight, Michelle. If you enjoyed the information that Michelle just gave, give her a shout out in the chat. Let her know that you want to have her back. Michelle, thank you so much for the information tonight, and hopefully we'll see you again next week.
I hope so. And then one thing real quick, if anybody wants to follow me on Instagram, it's Chronic Bariatric Girly, and I'm doing a giveaway on that's open for entries through Saturday night at midnight of Built Bars.
Awesome. So check her out, Chronic Bariatric Girly. I'll make sure I get that in the description of the video tonight here after, so people can see that in posterity. Thank you, Michelle, for being here. Appreciate you.
Thanks.
See you
Bye,
next
everybody.
Week. Bye. Michelle Hess with our weekly Michelle's Maintenance Update. We need a bumper for that, don't we? Where have I been? I've been slacking. What have I even been doing this week? My goodness. So yeah, excellent information from Michelle. I appreciate that. We have got a great next segment, but before we jump into it, I want to remind everybody about the update at onthepen.com. Make sure that you jump over there, check out onthepen.com/email for email updates, or you can just go to onthepen.com, scroll to the bottom, make sure you get signed up for email updates. We're going to be doing more and more with that. If you prefer to get information that way direct to your inbox, would love it if you would sign up there for the email alerts. But I am so excited to bring this next part of the show to you. Not necessarily a channel, but the bumper is always worthy of being played. We've got Mimi from Australia to talk about the Triumph trial, the Retatrutide trial that she is an active participant in, a non-placebo, presumably, participant in the Retatrutide trial. We're going to hear so much from her. I believe she's still in the chat. She was on her lunch break over in Australia. She may not be there, but make sure that you drop any questions that you may have. I hope that I covered them all in this interview. If I didn't, I apologize, but we're going to bring in the interview with Mimi right after we roll this beautiful bean footage.
Hot channel.
Guys, I am so excited about this one. For a while now, I've been reading in the comments from a viewer, Mimi in Australia, sharing about the fact that she has started a Retatrutide trial. Now, you know, if you've been a follower of On the Pen, that we've been talking about Retatrutide for over a year and a half. Since before you could find any content about Retatrutide, we've been talking about it over here. So you know that when I heard somebody actively involved in a clinical trial, we just had to hear from them. And so I am so excited to welcome into the stream tonight our friend Mimi from Australia. Mimi, welcome.
Hi, how you going?
Going very well. How are you today?
Good, thank you.
Good. It's such a pleasure to have you here. Thank you for making some time for the channel, Mimi.
No worries. Thank you for having me.
And it's awfully early. What time is it in the morning there?
It is 7:30 a.m. on Wednesday morning here.
7:30 a.m. and we're 4:30 here in Iowa. So weird time for you, sort of the end of the day for me, but we made it work, and I'm so glad that you did. And I'm so glad that you're willing to share a little bit about your journey with Retatrutide.
Yep, great.
So Mimi, how did you get hooked up with the Retatrutide trial in the first place?
Well, you know, it was just one of those chance things, really. So, you know, I'm a person who's been overweight most of their adult life. I have previously been on Saxenda in 2018, which is the daily GLP-1 injection, and then in 2022 I went on. I lost weight and I regained it, and then in 2022 I went on Ozempic, but only got about 3 months into it, and then our FDA equivalent here, the TGA, put bans on prescribers doing it for weight loss, and they could only prescribe for type 2 diabetes. So I couldn't get any supply, and so then the weight that I'd lost from that I'd regained as well. So it was over the Christmas break, and you know, as you're thinking of your New Year resolutions, and you know, I was thinking that I wanted to try and do something, and I knew that a GLP pathway of some kind was going to be the way to do it for me. And very fortuitously, an advert just popped up on my social media going, we're recruiting for clinical trials for obesity in your area. So I filled in a little online survey, met the criteria. So for the Retatrutide trials, there's a couple of different types. So some of them they're all looking at obesity, but some are looking at osteoarthritis. Some of them are looking at sleep apnea. The one that I'm involved in is looking at cardiovascular. So to qualify for that one, you had to have a BMI of over 35. You had to have previously had a stroke or a heart attack. So I had a stroke about 20 years ago, and you couldn't have been on any weight loss medication in the last 3 months. So yeah, I met the qualifications, and there was a recruiting centre that is walking distance from my workplace. So that was great because they let me come in first thing in the morning, and I go off and I'll see them and get my bloods and do whatever I need to do, and then go to work after that.
So how often do you have to see them? Is this a weekly thing or once weekly?
It kind of varies. So there's a pre-screening period of 3 visits. So I did the 3 pre-screening visits in January. So, they do ECGs or EKGs, I think you call them, and lots of blood tests and lots of measurements and just going through the whole protocol and making sure that you know what you're getting yourself into. So for the trial that I'm in, 50% of us are on placebo and 50% of us are on the active ingredient. And so I went into the trial not being, I wouldn't say overjoyed, but I was willing to go in even on placebo, because honestly, for me, the prospect of getting on the scales in front of a complete stranger every month would be enough to motivate me quite a bit. So I had the 3. Yeah, that's right. So I had the 3 pre-screening visits in January, and after, they don't tell you until the end of visit number 3, and all of your bloods have come back and all of your tests, and they know that you're healthy and everything's okay. And then they say, yes, you meet the criteria. And then I actually had a bit of a gap because I came over to the US on holidays to see, I've got a son who lives in Washington State. So I came over to see him for a couple of weeks. So I actually had my very first injection 6 weeks ago today. And then I'm kind of on monthly visits now. So the product comes like the Mounjaro pens do in the pre-filled pens, the auto injectors. And so, yeah, like that, but it's got no labeling or anything on it.
Sure.
So I go in once a month. They give me my 4 pens in my box, and I have whatever tests need to be done at that time. Usually it's a blood test, and I get weighed and measured, and they look at. I have to do a food diary for 3 days of the month, so they'll look at my food diary and just make sure that I'm not eating too much or too little, and making sure I'm getting enough protein and all that kind of thing. So I'm 6 weeks in. I've lost 7.7 kilos, which my calculator tells me is 16 pounds, and it's about 8% of my starting body weight. So I don't believe I'm on the placebo. I don't think I could do that just with the fear of getting on the scales in front of a stranger. And having been on Saxenda and Ozempic before, the side effect profile is kind of similar.
Okay. What percentage of your body weight did you say that was in 6 weeks?
8%.
8%. That's incredible. That's incredible.
Yeah.
So you said the side effects that you have been feeling, even with that rapid of a weight loss, been similar to Saxenda or Ozempic?
Yes, correct. Yeah. So initially, bit of fatigue, bit of headaches on shot day, little bit of constipation initially, feeling cold, nothing that's horrible or untreatable. And sometimes I think it's just more that you notice things. You go, oh, I'm feeling cold today. And then you think, oh, I wonder if that's, it's still pretty warm here. It's still 30 degrees, which is about 82, I think, Fahrenheit, or 92. Yeah. Anyway, it's warm.
It's a lot warmer than Iowa.
Yeah, it was pretty cold when I went to Washington State in February. So sometimes I think, when you're on these medications, you're almost kind of looking for it. Like everything that happens, you think, oh, is that a side effect of the medication? But it's not uncomfortable. There's nothing unmanageable. It's certainly no worse than any side effects that I had on Ozempic or Saxenda.
Interesting. So have you had any, like one of the things that they talk about, so obviously having only experienced Ozempic and Saxenda before, you've only ever been on a GLP-1, where Mounjaro is much more a GIP, so considerably fewer side effects are reported, anecdotally at least. People tend to do better from a side effect standpoint on Mounjaro than they did on Ozempic. Now with Retatrutide being the next level, do you notice that adding the glucagon component, does that tick up your heart rate or do anything cardiovascularly? Because I think that's the big concern with glucagon agonism. Yeah,
I think it's interesting. So I am on a Reddit subreddit for other people on the Retatrutide trial, because as you can imagine, it's quite isolating, and I've been so grateful for the GLP community online and for yourself, to get some support, because like the centre that I'm at only has 6 people in the trial, so 3 of us are on placebo and 3 are on active ingredient. It's not like they introduce us to each other, so it's really hard, it's just nice to have other people to talk to and go, oh, are you having this or what have you? So it's certainly something that has come up in the Retatrutide trial Reddit. But I figure that, if they've got a whole arm that is for people that have previously had a cardiovascular event, like that's a qualifier to get in, that you have to have had a heart attack or stroke previously. I can't imagine Eli Lilly is going to want to take the risk, if they think that this heart rate issue is really problematic in people who've already got risk factors. But I haven't noticed anything. I haven't noticed anything so far with my heart rate.
Yeah.
Yeah, I almost feel like I've skipped a step, because I've gone from GLP to triple. I kind of missed the double agonist step.
Right. Well, you're obviously responding well to it. 8% of your body weight in 6 weeks. I mean, that's over 1% of your body weight per week. How did you respond on Saxenda and Ozempic? Do you feel like it was a slower weight loss on those, or did you just respond really well to those as well?
I responded well to those also. I think probably what makes it difficult to compare is because I'm in a trial, I have no control over the dosing upgrades. So the trial, is very strict and says, right, you'll be on this dose for this number of weeks, and then you'll go to that dose and that dose and that dose. Whereas I did respond well to the GLP ones previously, and I stayed on the lowest dose of both Saxenda and Ozempic for a long time, mainly because I was concerned that because I was losing weight and I didn't want to increase the risk of side effects getting worse if I went up. So I would say that my weight loss was a little bit slower, but it does seem to be settling down now. Like I think initially I lost about 5 kilos in the first 3 weeks, and I was kind of getting a bit worried. So that would be maybe about 11 pounds, 12 pounds or something like that. So yes, I was a bit concerned initially by how much I was losing, but it does seem to be settling down a bit now. But I also think that's because I had to pull myself together and go, okay, I know you don't feel like eating, but you have to eat, and you have to eat protein, and you have to get liquids in. And so that's kind of been a bit counterintuitive.
Did you have to tell yourself that with the others? With those?
No. With the others, I still had a background level of hunger, whereas so if I'm on the trial drug, I've gone up to the second dose now. So I've had 2 shots of the second dose, and my appetite suppression, was very marked when I went up the dose.
There was a
really
noticeable increase
completely.
That was going to be my next question, is if you noticed that. Yeah, cool. I'm curious, so a lot of these trials have a washout period if you were on a previous GLP-1. I'm surprised that 3 months is all that they were looking for, because a lot of the ones that I've looked up, because I would love to be on a Retatrutide trial also, but the ones that I've looked up, the washout periods are much longer, or they're looking for people who have never been on a GLP-1, which is going to be harder and harder to do as these trials move along. But I'm curious, did they ask how you responded to the other ones? Like if you lost weight on them and how much you lost, or not at all?
No, they just wanted to, one of the other criteria was, so there were 3 criteria. You had to have a BMI over 30 for Triumph 3, which is the trial I'm in. You had to have a BMI over 35. You had to have previously had a heart attack or stroke, and you had to have had at least 1 attempt in your life at losing weight. Well, times that by 100, really. And so, so all they were really interested in was, okay, so you've taken GLPs before. Did you have any major side effects or anything like that?
That's awesome. The interesting thing that you had mentioned earlier that I think is something that I've never considered about, because I always wonder when you're jumping on a clinical trial where half of the people get placebo and half of the people get the medication, I would think that if I didn't realize pretty quick that I was on the medication, I would drop out. And so you have to wonder about how the dropout rates are. But I find it really interesting that you said that you thought that it would be a motivator, even if you didn't get the API, it would be a motivator to just have to basically get on a scale in front of a stranger. I think I've never thought about that, but for many people that could be a useful selling point. Like, hey, even if you get on placebo, you're going to want to work at it. And you also have to wonder how much that affects the numbers against, placebo, like people being maybe more motivated than they would be normally. That's an interesting thing to consider. I'm curious, Mimi, about injection sites. So I'm actually kind of surprised to find that they give you the medicine and just trust that you're going to have it on the right day, that you're going to inject it properly, that there isn't going to be any pen failure, and that they don't want complete control over that. So since you're self-injecting, do they tell you where to inject or anything like that?
So there are some checks in place to make sure, that I'm not giving it to the neighbour or what have you. So the very first injection I had to do at the site in front of the trial staff so that they could see what I was doing and make sure that I was doing it properly. And then I was sent home with the other 3 pens. So each time I go for a visit, I have to bring back my box of used pens so that they can check the pens for tampering. And then I also have to, they must be, because they obviously know in the background what dose I'm on or what have you, I also have to then say, all right, well, I had my injection on this day at this time, and then they calculate, all right, well, she should have this much of active product in her bloodstream, and then I'll actually have a blood test done as well before I get the next box to show. So so you can't be like, injecting the liquid and drawing it up and into a syringe and giving yourself only half of it or what have you, because it would become obvious to the trial very quickly if you weren't following it.
So they're actively monitoring the levels of the medication in your blood throughout the trial process. That's very interesting. So given that you just started this trial, you're 6 weeks into it, down 8%. And that you are sort of beholden to this titration schedule. Do you know how many more doses there are to go? So you're on dose number 2. Do you know how many more rungs of the ladder there are?
There's at least another 2. And then a bit like the phase 2 trials. So, there's a bit of variation, within the groups getting the active ingredient. There's a bit of variation. Some of them go right up to the maximum dose, and some of them go sort of slightly less than the maximum dose. So I don't think I'll at this stage, I'm all of the people on the active ingredient at this, at this, if they're 6 weeks in, because obviously there's people that started before me. We're all kind of on the same dose at this time.
Okay, interesting. And you said the trial lasts how long?
2 years.
2 years is a long time to get free Retatrutide.
Well, at least I don't have any supply issues.
Hey. Knock on wood. I've been covering this merger with Catalent, which is a generics manufacturer that does massive amounts of finish and fill work for all of these medications, right? And Eli Lilly basically said on their last earnings call that Catalent's even helping with some of their clinical trials. So it's highly likely that Catalent is filling even pens for the Retatrutide trials, and Catalent is in the process of being purchased by Novo Nordisk. And so one of the things that Eli Lilly is saying, sort of like, you can kind of hear the terror in their voice when they talk about it, because they're like, well, we hope that they'll live up to their contracts. We expect that they'll live up to their contracts. So knock on wood that the supply remains good for you, although I'm sure they would prioritize a lot of those clinical trials because there's just so much money wrapped up into them, especially on the trials that are involved for MASH, for liver studies, because they have to biopsy livers frequently. I can't imagine how expensive those studies are to do, but you're on the study for cardiovascular. I'm sorry to hear about the fact that you had a stroke, but it seems like you're doing very well, and that's a really positive thing. And everything that we're learning about this entire class of medicine is so positive. I think about the were the trials that came out for Wegovy. I think they were called the STEP trials, maybe, for the cardiovascular indication. I think if you extrapolate that across the whole class of medication, and considering retatrutide would be like the next best thing, I think that is a really great thing for you to have 2 years on a medicine that you would otherwise have to wait another probably 2 to 3 years to get. So that's awesome for not only for the exciting part of it and the weight loss and all the great things that come with that, but for just your cardiovascular health. I think this is an awesome opportunity for you.
Yeah, no, I'm really pleased, to be on the trial, and as I said, I was, quite happy to sit there on placebo, because I looked at it as if, imagine if I was trying to white knuckle it on my own, and then I would go and say pay to see a dietitian or pay to see an endocrinologist. And all of those things are actually included, because that's the people who you see as part of your trial team. So, even if you're on placebo, you're not having to pay for any of that. So it's still, I think even if you're on the placebo arm, there's a benefit to it.
Do they give you a copy of your blood work? Obviously, they wouldn't give you a copy of your blood work that shows the level of the medication. But do they give you copies of your blood work when it comes to like your metabolic panel and your triglycerides and your cholesterol and all that, or not?
Not that I know of. They've certainly not offered at this stage. So from where I am in Australia, I get the blood collected obviously at my local centre, but then the bloods apparently get sent to Singapore for testing. But I know that like when I come in for my visits, they'll have the blood results there, and they'll be looking at them and saying, oh yes, okay, this is all good, and what have you.
Okay. Yeah, I'm sure that you would get alerted if something was off. That would be interesting to know kind of what the protocol is when something gets off too far. Do they kick you off, or, I'd be interested to know more about that stuff. But this is amazing information. So you're on the second dose, you're 6 weeks in, you're down 8% of your body weight. You've been shown to be a good responder to GLP-1 medications prior to. So I would imagine that this will ring true through the rest of the trial. I kind of wonder how somebody, let's say Mimi, in 6 months, you're to your goal weight and they keep you on the highest dose. I mean, how do they handle that if you just start losing too much weight? They can't really put you in a maintenance dose. Would you have to go off the trial at that point, or what would happen?
So from what I've read on Reddit with the other trial participants who are a bit further along than me, and also if you go to the New England Journal of Medicine paper for the phase 2 trials, you can actually download the protocol from that. And so there's safeguards in there. So if your BMI gets down to 22, they stop the medication, but you stay in the trial. And I believe that there's also so let's say something happened and I suddenly had to go and have surgery. So, for GLPs, they like you to stop them before surgery because it slows down the stomach contents too much, and there's a risk of you aspirating during the surgery. So there's apparently parameters in place for that kind of thing as well. So if you need to have surgery, they stop you for a while, and so that they seem to have covered that kind of thing.
Okay. I figured they had some sort of mechanism in place for that, but I had no idea what it was. That's interesting. And you obviously are not somebody who just jumped into this willy-nilly. It sounds like you read all the things and all the fine print and everything, and you're in some. It's interesting to hear that there are even Reddit forums on people who are in the clinical trials, so that you do have that sort of community, and because you're trailblazers. I mean, a couple of weeks ago, we had a guest on who was part of the Surmount-1 studies for
Tara.
Yeah, Tara. And so that was very enlightening just to hear from her perspective. But, like her, you're trailblazing. You are the forerunners for people who will be on this medication, and people like me who are pining for the next generation of these drugs, because these drugs just quite don't do it for me. Right. So that is an exciting thing to be a part of. I'm curious what your thoughts are, to kind of shift gears a little bit. Earlier this week, I've read some articles that there are actually not read some articles. I actually have people contact me. I'd say 4 or 5 people in the last week, Mimi, that have contacted me saying that their clinicians, their providers, are offering them compounded versions of Retatrutide. Clinicians in the United States. And I was dumbfounded to see this, which kind of, I guess that's a whole separate conversation. But what I'm curious to know about is I've been reading also a lot in the news about how what is the FDA equivalent over there in Australia?
The TGA, the Therapeutic Goods Administration.
Okay, so the TGA, which would be the FDA sort of counterpart in Australia, what I've been reading is that they're really looking at cracking down on compounded versions of this medication. And, I don't keep up a whole lot with the news in Australia, but I know enough to know that they've sort of gotten like a trickling in of GLP-1 medications, but it's constant shortages. If we think that we have it bad over here, it's like world's worst over there. And even though they have the easier presentation, the single dose vial presentations of Mounjaro, they still have a hard time getting access. So compounds are just as important over there as they are here. And it sounds like they might be in danger. Do you know anything about that, or have you followed that at all?
Yeah, I think they really are in danger. So the big story breaking in Australia last week, which you've spoken about, was our Ozempic cowboy, who was selling I think it was semaglutide, and was selling it not only in Australia but actually selling it in the US as well. And it was actually somebody in the US from Kansas City who alerted our TGA and said, this product is dodgy. You should be looking at this. And unfortunately, there's been a number of people in Australia who've ended up in hospital from using this product. And so, that's and I know often when I watch the US social media, you talk about I think it's your 503A and your 503B pharmacies. And I don't know what our equivalent is here in Australia, or if we do have an equivalent, but certainly, I think this guy who's been making the semaglutide, and I think it's got 10 times the amount of vitamin B6 or something in it that it's meant to have. He's obviously been getting away with that for a long time, and it's very hard for the TGA to police. And I think their heart's in the right place, that they want to protect Australians and stop people ending up in hospital, but there needs to be a middle ground somewhere, I think, whereas, maybe we can say, okay, these pharmacies are approved, they've met these standards by the TGA, and we will allow them to produce compounds. But we don't seem to have that middle step that I'm aware of at the moment. Yeah,
so in the United States, it's 503A. And the 503A pharmacies, just for educational purposes for anybody watching, the 503A pharmacies are governed by their state board of pharmacy. 503B pharmacies are governed by their state board of pharmacies and the FDA. So they're subject to FDA oversight, certain FDA regulations that the 503A are not subject to. And then they also have to comply with the current goods and manufacturing standards, which are a whole manufacturing process of documentation and all those things. And so the 503, what I always say is 503B, or it's not for me. I don't take compounds, but if I did, that's the direction that I would be looking. So then it sounds like there's a third option in Australia, and that's Ozempic Cowboy's bathtub. Do I have that right?
Yeah, it seems to be, yeah. Yeah, and I don't want to say that there's not reputable pharmacies in Australia compounding. I'm sure there is. I'm sure that they outweigh the cowboys, but the cowboys are ruining it for everybody. The
cowboy is certainly a one-off, but it's a great example of the unscrupulous people that get into taking advantage of desperate people and are willing to put people's health at risk for the sake of making $1. And these are the types of things that concern me in the United States. That's what concerns me about Retatrutide being offered when it hasn't even finished phase 3 clinical trials. Because ultimately, I believe that doctors and patients should be able to make their own decisions. But I also am concerned about everybody, the collective, because when somebody starts to get hurt by these things that haven't been fully tested, and that starts to make the rounds in the news, and then it becomes this whole social discourse, it's going to ruin compounds for everybody. That's what's ultimately going to happen, because it's going to give them a bad name. And not only compounds, but we could get into the research grade versions that are also super underregulated for the fact that people do not use them for research purposes. They use them for their own personal use. And it's well known that happens. And my concern is just that people are going to get because you have documented as part of your phase 3 clinical trial, you have impeccable access to care. You have routine lab work done. You have routine checkups by specialists, and a very controlled environment where, that's just not happening when people are buying stuff online and have no idea really ultimately what they're putting in their body unless they go have it personally tested. So that's a whole topic, probably worthy of discussion at another time. But I was just curious because Australia has been in the news in the United States for that reason as it relates to GLP-1s. I'm thinking back to, and then I won't keep you hostage for too long, let you go about your day. But I am curious, when you were on Saxenda and when you were on Ozempic in Australia, how was your accessibility to those medications and how affordable were they for you?
So if you have type 2 diabetes, they are, what would you call it? They're not completely free, but they're very, very heavily discounted by our pharmaceutical benefits scheme. So let's say if you were type 2 diabetes and you needed Ozempic, like a pen might cost you $30. Whereas if you don't have type 2 diabetes, it's like $150, something like that. So Saxenda, so it was daily and it came in the little dial-up pens where you put your own needle on. And that was about $375 Australian for 5 pens. But 5 pens, like if you were on the maximum dose, 5 pens was a month. But, starting off like that would often last you quite a while. Ozempic, I'm trying to think, and in 2022, I think it was around the $150 per pen. And again, it was the same style where you put the needle on and you dialed up the dose. So that could last you quite a while as well. But, like when I look online now, like I looked online the other day and Mounjaro is over here, a 5 milligram vial of Mounjaro is $85, which is lovely that it's advertised, but virtually nobody can get it. But like that's a much, much cheaper price than in the US. But the only GLPs in Australia that are registered for obesity is Saxenda. So Ozempic is not registered for obesity. So and Mounjaro is not listed for obesity either. So anybody that's getting prescribed those that doesn't have type 2 diabetes is getting off-label prescribing, which is still legal. It's like a, risk-benefit discussion between you and your doctor. But then, the TGA can, when there's times of shortages, the TGA will come out and say, okay, because of the shortages, we're limiting it now and you won't be able to prescribe it for anybody that doesn't have type 2 diabetes.
Mm-hmm. And we've heard about that in a lot of the single-payer countries in the United Kingdom as well, where they've really shut down access to Ozempic specifically for the weight loss indication until they can serve the diabetic market. We hear that story several times over the last year or so. So very interesting how the dynamics are between the countries. And I think that it'll be really interesting as it continues to evolve. Even today, I think it was either today or yesterday that it was announced that the company Biocon was approved in the United Kingdom to provide generic liraglutide, which is Saxenda and Victoza. So hopefully you'll see, with that coming online in the next year, you'll see an expanded access of GLP-1s in general, just with the generic liraglutide hitting the market in the United Kingdom, over there at least. And so you're talking about ex-US markets. We tend to, in the United States, lump them all together. But yeah, I think it's just something to consider when these medications are launched in non-US markets. It's like, if we think we have it bad here from a supply standpoint, it's just so unpredictable over there. I hear from people pretty routinely who are like, I started it and now I can't find it anywhere. I haven't been able to find it for 2 or 3 months. And so, that's rough. I don't think that anybody has gone that long in this country without a GLP-1 medication, maybe an extra 3 weeks or maybe an extra month, maybe 6 weeks at the most is what I've heard. But to go several months without being able to find any kind of GLP-1, forget the one you're on, but any kind at all would be pretty brutal. So Mimi, I appreciate you coming on and sharing some about your trial. I hope that we will get the chance to do this again if you'd be willing to come on and share sort of as this progresses.
Absolutely.
It was very kind of
no.
you to give some of your time, especially this early in the morning for you. But yeah, pleasure talking to you, and thanks for joining us. And we'll catch you maybe in a couple months or so and see how things are going. Just check in with you.
Yeah, that sounds great. And thank you so much, Dave, for everything you do with all of your information. It's really great, really useful.
I'm glad that you can enjoy it, and I'm glad that you can find some value in it. So thank you very much for that, and appreciate you coming on. We'll do it again.
No worries. Bye.
See ya. Mimi in Australia sharing her experience on the Retatrutide trials. If you have questions for Mimi, drop them in the chat. I'm sure that she would love to come back and answer them in the future, or if she's in the chat tonight, she would be more than willing to answer them. I'm sure that there are questions that you're thinking of that I didn't, but it sure was nice of her to offer some of her time to the stream tonight. So make sure that you give her some love in the chat. We got some bonus Mimi there at the end. I goofed and added her to the stream back. I don't know about you. I'm going to say the most white American guy thing possible, but like Mimi with her Australian accent could literally sit there and read the phone book, and I would listen and I would be engaged. The Australian accent, for whatever reason, I have always enjoyed it thoroughly. And so, yeah, Mimi, of course, that's the first thing I have to mention after that amazing interview, right? Because let's talk about that interview. Should we talk about that interview for a second? How many people who are on any clinical trial? Now, granted, she said she's in a Reddit forum, a subreddit, where they all share about their experience on the Retatrutide trial. So there's a lot of people in this trial. But like, let's rewind the clock like 5-6 years ago. Do you think there were this many people that engaged in the medication that they were taking in a clinical trial? To the point where there was like a small community of people who were gathering online to say, what's your experience? I mean, maybe I've just been out of touch because it hasn't been as engaging as this class of medications is for me personally, but it's astounding. Like, I'm just a guy. Like, I was talking to my wife I was on Yahoo Finance this week. We talked about it earlier in the show, and I was like, I was just said to my wife, like, I pointed to my kids. I'm like, I'm these kids' dad. I'm their daddy. I play basketball with them, and we play ball in the side yard, and we laugh, and daddy toots, and the kids laugh. And like, that's our life here. And this week I was on Yahoo freaking Finance to talk about one of the largest companies in the world. Like, I'm just a guy. Like, these medications, like, if this channel serves as a testament to anything, let it serve as a testament to, if you're interested in these medications, if you're interested in Ozempic or GLP-1s, or you've heard sort of these buzzwords within pop culture lately, let it serve as a testament to the fact that these things change lives. These medications change lives. They've changed mine, right? And not even super dramatically, like they've controlled my diabetes, right? Like, there are other medications that control diabetes, right? But they've not only controlled my diabetes, they've allowed me to live a normal person life while having diabetes. So I gotta say, like, these medications, in this whole class and the future of them, they just do not cease to excite me. I don't know that I will ever tire of learning all that these medications can do and will do in the future. And if you're, I gotta say, like, I've talked about this since, like, literally, I think probably some of my first few videos that I made. I feel like a GLP-1 evangelist. I feel like I'm spreading the gospel, like, preach, son. I feel like I'm preaching about these medications. And the reason that I am is because they are changing lives. And I think I'm more passionate about that now than I was even when I started. And I started to feel the change for myself, because I literally interact with thousands of people on a weekly basis. We've got 13,000, almost 14,000 people in the Facebook group. We're almost, I think tonight, if you're here and you're watching on YouTube and you're not subscribing, if you subscribe right now, we're going to hit 8,000 subscribers on YouTube before this thing is over. And we've only been doing this for about 18 months. TikTok, we're just shy of 30,000 followers. Like, I talk to a lot of people every week about these medications, and all I can say is they're changing people's lives. So I'll continue to preach it from the top of the mountains. Retatrutide is the one, like, shortly after I started this medication, I go, okay, so what else is there? And I remember I was in a, good night, Mimi Muses. Good to have you. Second Mimi, OG Mimi, right? I remember this very well. I was on a work trip and I was down in Phoenix. So I was in Phoenix, Arizona. Dr. Paul DeSantis wants to know over on X, where you can find me on YouTube. You can find me at On the Pen. I'm pretty sure at this point, if you just search On the Pen anywhere, you should probably find me. But my name is Dave Knapp. If you add Dave Knapp to that, you should find me. But my work trip to Phoenix, and I was like, what else is there? I'd done a live from my hotel room, and I was just doing a deep dive on the internet. And I was like, Retatrutide, what is this? Retatrutide? And so and there was some news, and so we started following it. This is like December of 2022, right? And we're well into 2024. So Retatrutide is one that I've been particularly excited about. But the cool thing about that is that Retatrutide isn't like where it stops, right? So you have CagriSema coming from Novo Nordisk, which is, if you're familiar with Ozempic, if you're familiar with Wegovy, these medications are semaglutide. So they've taken semaglutide, they've combined it with caglarinotide, which is an amylin agonist, which helps control hunger. And that's going to be on the market even before Retatrutide with similar results. So it's just absolutely amazing where these medications are. And then you think about the long-term future of these medications and where these can possibly go when these companies are starting to partner with AI companies. And I know what AI has just done for me and in my own daily life and the life of this channel and the life of the work that I do here, the life of the work that I do outside of here. I mean, I imagine what it's going to do with these drug companies with endless supplies of money. So the future is absolutely bright. The future is absolutely bright for this medication. I can't help but notice the chat is still going. Dr. Paul DeSantis wants to know, how horrible is the Ozempic pen versus the Mounjaro pen? I actually prefer the Ozempic pen versus the Mounjaro pen for one main reason, and that's that the Ozempic pen is adjustable, because, I like to have control of things. The Ozempic pen is very interesting because you pop the top off, right? And you've got the whole month's supplies in here, and you kind of click it, and that pushes this thing down, and it pushes more medication through. And then all you have to do is simply attach a little needle to the end every time you inject. And when you're done, you just change the needle. So it is a awesome pen. So I don't mind it at all. And I like that it's just one pen. I mean, you waste 4 of these in a month versus 1 of these in a month. It feels like way less waste. And actually Novo Nordisk overseas has a recycling program for these pens, which I wish Eli Lilly would come up with over here, but I'm sure there's a lot of different, things in the way of them doing that. Ketone says it's caglarinotide, not caglarinotide. You're adding an extra syllable. I don't care. People get the point, right? Caglarinotide, whatever you want to say. Retatrutide, tomato. You get the point. But thank you, Ketones, for the correction. The future is super bright when it comes to these medications, and you're not going to catch me slacking on learning absolutely everything there is to learn. That's why I hope you'll go over to onthepen.com, sign up for the newsletter, find me on all the socials right now. If you could just take the time to find me on all the socials, whatever social, we're just going to take a quick, 15-second timeout. If you prefer to use TikTok, if you prefer to use Instagram, if you prefer to use Facebook, if you prefer to use Twitter, go find me at any one of those that you use. Search for On the Pen, Dave Knapp, or I'm pretty much at Man on the Mounjaro just about everywhere. On X, I'm at Man on Mounjaro because there aren't enough characters. So I hope you'll find me there. I hope you'll check it out. So now what we have to do is we have to figure out who gave the biggest super chat of the night, because the biggest super chat of the night gets to choose where I inject the last tenner, the 10 milligram of the Mounjaro. And so we actually have a tie between Michelle Kahn and Donna NP, two $19.99 super chats. Thank you, Donna, for the $19.99 super chat. I'm just seeing that. I appreciate that. So $19.99 super chat. So Michelle or Donna, I suppose it's a race to the comments to see who decides where I'm going to inject this bad girl tonight. But yes, Jennifer Nebraska joined TikTok just for me. Thank you. Others have as well, so thank you. Do you think they could make these pens with heavier paper tubing? Marty, that's a great question. I have no idea. Take 2 pens. Tongue inject. Yeah, right. Sublingual. So, Donna says the arm, right or left. So one of the interesting things that I've been hearing about this week. So two weird things that I've heard a lot this week. One of them I alluded to in the interview that I did with Mimi. That was the fact that there are clinicians prescribing compounded retatrutide. I can't believe that. I just cannot believe that. So that was the first thing that I tended to hear over and over. The second thing I heard over and over this week, and maybe it was just because I was attuned to it or whatever it was, is that people are everywhere are taking sublingual semaglutide. And I'm like, do people know anything about these medications? First of all, the biggest challenge with oral peptides is that your body there's no bioavailability of the medication. Your stomach acid sort of eats it up before you can actually get a ton of the medication. So that's why you see 14 milligrams is the high dose of Rybelsus, which is oral semaglutide, where 2.4 milligrams is the highest dose of semaglutide injectable. So almost, 6 times. So that's the crazy thing about that. So sublingually, I don't know. I don't know what the bioavailability is there, but I know I haven't seen a single dang study on that. So if you're taking sublingual semaglutide from a compound pharmacy, I'm interested to hear from you. Are there 503Bs doing Retta? I don't know about that, Johnny. I really don't. But, I have a problem with any clinician selling something that hasn't gone through FDA phase 3 trials. And I realize that is going to open up a whole can of worms. Just imagine where I fall on the side of that whole discussion. I think things need to go through clinical trials. I think the clinical trials tell us a lot. Are they infallible? No. Are they 100% perfect? No. But they tell us a lot, right? And they've given us a lot of medications. If you know or love anybody who deals with chronic disease, then you ought to have a really strong appreciation for phase 3 clinical trials. And that's all I got to say about the matter. So anyway, so we're going to do the arm tonight. I appreciate all the super chats tonight. Again, 10% of the super chats tonight are going to go to one paid member of the group. I'll do that drawing the first week of May, just like we did this month. Congratulations to Anna who did that. We're going to do the left arm. I got the CGM in the left arm too, but we'll just do it to the other side of it. I do it just like I do my CGM. So like the instructions are like, have a buddy do it. Like, okay. But this is how you do a CGM, right? You just kind of do it like that. So thank you for the super chats tonight. I really, really appreciate it. Man, this was a great show. I was so excited when Mimi said that she would be willing to come on and share about her experience. Does the arm hurt? No. I find that the most painful spot is in the stomach. It always sort of makes me wince. I don't know why, but I barely feel it there and I barely feel it in the thigh usually. So yeah. Thank you all for being here. Thank you for being the best part of what I do at On the Pen. Like this was such an amazing week. I really implore you. I know I ask a lot of you on this channel. We do a podcast here too every week. If you could go give that a 5-star rating or review, the link's in the description to that. The link's also in the description to the Yahoo Finance video on YouTube. Go over and give some love to that video if you would. Hashtag release the vials, because come on now. The wild, wild west is coming to the United States, you know, the Ozempic cowboy, the whole thing, it's going to get squirrely here, folks, if we do not release the vials. It's so important to people's health, not only from what's going to happen on the gray market if we don't, but more importantly, we don't have good data for what it's like to yo-yo on these doses. We know what a nice clean titration process looks like. We don't know what it means to go from a 15 to a 5 back up to a 10 back. I mean, it messes with people. At a very minimum, it messes with people. I hope that I know that Eli Lilly is hearing us. I hope that they're taking it to heart. And Eli Lilly, a fantastic company founded by a colonel in the American Civil War who sought to see something better, more accessibility to safer medications to people. That's what Colonel Eli Lilly saw. I hope that that's what Dave Rick sees. I hope that's what Anat Ashkenazi sees. I hope that's what their board of directors sees. And I hope that they release the vials. But until next week, thank you for being here. Thank you for being the best part of what I do at On the Pen with Man on the Mounjaro. I'm so excited every week to do this. I'm so excited to do it again with you next week. Until next week, we will see you on the pen, and have a great week, everybody. Thank you so much. Forgot my blessing. I don't want to forget it this week. I want to tell you all, may the Lord bless you and keep you, make his face shine upon you and be gracious to you. And we'll see you next week.